The nice thing about older trees is they actually are more likely to respond to a cold front and flower. Here's one that's setting all the fruit. You see all the little mangoes?
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, pretty good, right? I'm looking at this panicle and I see the flies are at work doing some pollinating here. But already there's a bunch of little fruits setting.
How old is this tree?
This is almost certainly older than the Edward trees over there. I would guess this tree is 80 or 90 years old.
So as of now, you would say the mango season for 2025 is looking promising?
It looks like it's gonna at least start in spring for us in terms of, I mean, we'll have some mangoes, I'm sure, by March. This panicle, you can see all the little fruitlets that have already set in. We will be getting some very early fruit from this tree. My estimation would be by the end of this month, all our rosy gold trees should be flowering.
Hello everybody, welcome to Fruitful Trees. Guess where I am? I'm back at Tropical Acres Farms. It's been a couple of months, I guess, since I spoke about mangoes because mango season has ended, but we are in the beginning of December. It's still 2024, and we came out to the farm because Alex says a lot of his, or some of his trees are starting to bloom for the 2025 mango season. He even has some mangoes on some of the trees now that have set fruit. So we're gonna look at that today. It's great to be back here at Tropical Acres Farms as we get ready for the next season. So we're gonna go find Alex and we're gonna hear what he has to say about what trees are in bloom right now. Here we go. We are at Tropical Acres Farms. This is Alex. We're in the beginning of December 2024. Yep.
Okay, so today is December 5th, 2024 here in West Palm Beach, Florida. And we're starting to document some of the bloom that is occurring on the mango trees or beginning on the mango trees for the 2025 season. Already, even though it's quite early, we have bloom that has emerged from a number of our trees. And that bloom actually was probably initiated by the change in photo period as well as dry weather because we hadn't had a lot of cool conditions before these blooms had started to emerge. So we know that the cold weather wasn't what stimulated what you're going to see in a moment. But we have been getting some cold weather for the last couple of weeks, intermittently, and that is starting to trigger a number of our trees to flower. So we wanted to document that and show it to you. But first I'm going to talk about the ones that have already flowered and actually have already set fruit. So
now is cold weather good or bad at this time of year?
Cold weather is very desirable because at least here it's going to make our mango trees flower.
Okay, so
the more of it we get, the more bloom. What's that?
We just had a cold front.
We just had it, and we are still amidst a cold front, so we have a couple more nights of cool weather. I think we're going to end up with about 6 or 7 days of temperatures where the low will get below 60 degrees Fahrenheit, and that's enough to stimulate a number of varieties to flower. It won't make everything here flower, but in a few weeks, we should have bloom coming out of a number of trees, and we already have buds pushing on some of these, and we're going to show you that on a number of varieties pretty soon, just so you can see what some of the more sensitive mangoes are, easier flowering mangoes. So, but anyway, right here we actually have fruit set already on a number of our Edward trees. Okay.
Let's see, hold on, here. Okay.
And so there's a little bit of marring from...
Now is this a normal time for Edward to fruit?
It is very normal for us to see some bloom already at this point in time. So there is a little bit of marring on some of the fruits. This is most likely actually from thrip damage, not from anthracnose, okay? In fact, you can see how this one, the flowers didn't even open up properly, and that's from thrips feeding on the panicles, okay? It's not from fungus, but a lot of people would look at that and think it's fungus. Fortunately, most of our flowers and small fruits are fine, but sometimes, especially at the lower level of the tree, we'll see a little bit of that, and we haven't applied anything to prevent it. But up here, Paul, you can pan up here and look at the this section of the canopy. You can see quite a bit of bloom came out over here. Now, at this point, even though most of the canopy hasn't flowered yet, we can see on the stem tips, the terminal bud is swelling up on pretty much the whole thing. so you can see.
So now, a side note is, if somebody was going to top work, that would be the time to grab it, right?
No, because it's about to push a bloom. So
I mean, if you didn't want the bloom, if you wanted to just get budwood, would that be the type of budwood?
Yeah, but I wouldn't do it right now because you want stems and leaves. You don't want panicles. So if this was occurring like this, you know, in the warmer part of the year, I would say, great, yeah, do it. This is the kind of bud that we would be looking for if we were clipping, you know, scions for a customer. But at any rate, what's going to push out here is going to be flower panicles.
Okay.
So, and it's all over the tree. It's even on some of the fresher stems. And so not all mangoes will do this, okay? But Edward is a very sensitive tree when it comes to bloom stimuli. And even its younger stems will often respond to a brief cold front. So we'll go and we'll look at some of the Edward trees back here and see how they're doing.
And these trees we're looking at now are 50 and 60 years old, right?
Older than that. Some of them are more like 80 at this point, or getting close to it, I suppose, because they would have been grafted in the 1940s. So, pretty old trees. And the nice thing about older trees is they actually are more likely to respond to a cold front and flower, even if the cold front's duration and intensity isn't enough to trigger some of the younger trees to bloom. And we can look at some of these younger trees. For example, this is a coconut cream. We're probably not going to find any swelling buds on this that are ready to push a panicle, okay? But on these big Edward trees that are much older and more mature and so forth, we're going to find plenty.
Wow, since we were last here, these were all Duncan trees, right?
These are Edward trees.
Edwards.
Yeah.
Since
so they got pruned back.
You cut them down.
They're going to come back. So.
Wow. How long has it been since you cut them like this?
This was done back in August.
I mean, when's the last?
Oh, 1983.
So it must be
I think.
A pretty special moment for you to see the trees like this.
Well, obviously, it's very different from what you're used to seeing on this row, but these trees will come back. These trees received, you know, a strong prune similarly a few years ago, and they've recovered. So,
okay.
But anyway, so we will look at some of the bloom that's occurring on these Edwards. Here's one that's setting all the fruit. You see all the little mangoes?
Yeah, look at that.
Yeah, pretty good, right? That's pretty good fruit set for Edward.
Now, since it's starting to bloom, would you get powdery mildew at this point of year or just not yet?
So we actually did not spray to control powdery mildew on this little early bloom because it wasn't significant enough to justify it. And there's not as much inoculum in the air when there's not very many mango trees flowering. When the more of the trees start blooming, which is going to be very soon, these panicles that are about to start coming out of these trees, that we are going to spray because otherwise we most likely will expose them to powdery mildew and then it can put a pretty serious dent in our crop. So, but no, I did not spray these ones with fungicide or anything. They're just left up to the elements and they're still setting fruit fine. I have not observed any powdery mildew yet. Okay, but you can always assume that it's going to be there.
Now, when you say there's not that many trees flowering, do you mean within the tree or you mean the trees around?
I mean the trees around.
So if somebody would have a yard, a small yard with 1 or 2 trees, does it even make sense to spray for powdery mildew?
If their bloom is occurring on those trees when there's like there's no harm, right? Okay, but maybe you don't have time. Maybe you have to make time for it or whatever. Generally, that really, really early bloom, which actually most people aren't going to see anyway, is usually okay as far as powdery mildew goes. It's when you get to the point where most of the trees in your yard are flowering, that's where powdery mildew is a lot more likely to occur. But I'm not going to discourage somebody from, trying to prevent powdery mildew even now. Okay,
well,
like if you've got bloom coming out in November.
Whether now or even in the summer, if somebody has only 1 tree,
yeah,
they don't have a lot of trees, so is it worth spraying for powdery mildew? If it's
especially one tree is not hard to spray, right? For somebody like me who, it takes a little more time to do a spray.
Let me rephrase the question. Is it more or less likely the tree would get powdery mildew if they only have 1 tree?
Yes.
Okay.
It's less likely, but it doesn't mean it won't. Okay, don't take it to mean that. But yeah, the likelihood is a little reduced. there's less inoculum, okay? It spreads from tree to tree by wind and so forth. But especially if you're in an area like your neighbor's yard doesn't, or your community doesn't have a lot of mango trees in it, yeah, you'll probably see a little less of it, at least if you only have like one tree flowering or whatever. But during the peak mango bloom period, there's a lot of powdery mildew spores in the air. So
Okay.
Okay, so over here, these emerged a little later than those ones on the tree that we were looking at up front. So you can see the flowers are still very much open. Okay. And this one's already set some fruit. Now, this is normal for most of the fruit to be on the apex of the panicle. This half of this tree is pretty lit up well.
Wow. We're looking at trees. Some of them are 100 years old. Amazing.
So some of these flowers are still open.
Some of these trees are 100 years old.
there's a couple trees on the farm that are 100 years old. The Edward trees here are mostly like, 70-something years of age, or pushing 80 now, I guess, at this point.
Some of this fresher growth, right, which had not started to bud out yet. If we look carefully here, we've got swelling buds starting to occur. So this is going to be flowers really soon. Within a couple weeks, there's going to be open bloom on this tree. It'll be faster if it's warmer. If it's cooler, it'll take longer for the panicle to emerge and for the flowers to open. So,
now we've been having dry weather. How does rain affect this?
well, rain would be very undesirable at this point, and dry weather is actually really great. That means not only are the trees more likely to respond with more bloom, but we're not going to get any anthracnose when it's dry, or very minimal, if any at all. So we want it to be dry. I'm looking at this panicle and I see the flies are at work doing some pollinating here. But already there's a bunch of little fruits setting. So we're getting pretty good female flower ratio, or hermaphroditic flowers. That's always a concern when the Edward trees flower, is what percentage are female flowers versus male. And right now I'm seeing plenty of females. That's great. That means we're going to get fruit set. And if we get fruit set, we usually end up with fruit here. So these big trees over here all pretty much have at least some bloom on them. But I would expect that we're going to have a whole lot more in a few weeks on these. Now we'll go take a look at a few other trees that are either have flowers on them or are budding out as if they're going to flower really soon. So we'll go take a look first at some of our Philippine trees in the back.
Okay.
Large old Philippine Carabao mango. In California they call this Manila. It's the same thing.
so you can see there's a few panicles already coming out of this tree up in here.
But what's really exciting is that almost all the stems down here are swelling up.
Now this is a very large tree, okay? It's like 40 plus feet in height.
And
We get a lot of fruit from these trees. We have several of them here.
but this is going to be spring mango. So I'm excited about that. This is going to be fruit that's like maturing in the month of April. Maybe a little bit in May, but like, we want spring fruit. The more spring fruit, the better, compared to summer. So
It looks like we can expect, as long as these Philippine trees flower, we end up with a lot of fruit from them. And not all the stems have swollen up yet, but I would imagine that after this cold front is through,
the rest of the canopy should swell up too and start pushing panicles. So you can see how big this trunk is. It's a very old tree. Real big.
How old is this tree?
This is almost certainly older than the Edward trees over there. I would guess this tree is 80 or 90 years old. The Sturrocks probably planted these back in the 20s or 30s, I would think. And David Sturrock got introduced to the Philippine in Cuba, where it was more common at the time. It did get introduced to the United States in the early 20th century or late 19th century, I can't remember. But it was already much more common down there in Cuba. And so he kind of fell in love with the Philippine mango down there, and he planted a few of them here. There used to be 4 of them, at least, One of them died from hurricane damage, like around the time that I started harvesting the property 13 years ago or so. But the other 3 are still very much alive and still fruiting. So we definitely like to keep them around because they supply us with a lot of fruit, certainly. But from that fruit, we also get a lot of seed, and there's good demand for manila rootstock. So we use the seeds for rootstock from these trees quite a bit.
Okay.
So let's look at another tree right over here. It's our old Turpentine mango tree. So this is the oldest tree on the farm, and it is getting ready to go. All these mature stem tips are swelling up. So we're going to get an early turpentine bloom. That's terrific. We want our turpentines maturing early because we can get the seeds out of them early. We use turpentine pretty much exclusively for rootstock, although some of my employees like to eat them too, which is, they like them. So, I don't eat them too much because they're very stringy, but they make a terrific rootstock, and they make a lot of it. So we're going to have probably April, May turpentines. Yep. Lots of swollen buds on this big old tree.
So as of now, you would say the mango season for 2025 is looking promising?
It looks like it's going to at least start in spring for us in terms of, we'll have some mangoes, I'm sure, by March, but we will probably have some fruit that we can sell in the spring. We usually do. So I'm not this isn't like an exceptional event necessarily, but it looks like it could be a strong spring crop because of the number of large trees that we have that are going to flower. Normally those first fruits that we get in March and maybe the early part of April, we don't sell them usually. We'll keep them and eat them, share them with our family and employees and stuff. But what we'll do is when people come buy trees from us, we'll often give them some free mangoes as a thank you. So if you buy trees from us in the spring, think about that. We might have some random mangoes available in the early part of April, or when no mangoes are being sold. So that's something I like to do that time of year.
Great.
Okay, so this is one of a number of Dwarf Hawaiian trees we have here, and you can see we've got swollen buds. That's going to mean that we're going to have flowers all over this tree really soon. This one's a little more pronounced, so probably a little more visible. But pretty much the whole canopy's doing this. So we have a lot of these here. It's one of our early season standards, and a very popular variety, and a very manageable tree, and a very reliable tree. Flowers super easily. I like stuff that flowers easily and doesn't require a lot of coaxing to get it to do something. And every single year we get early bloom off of these Dwarf Hawaiian trees. Sometimes they can come out disproportionately male and then you don't end up with a lot of fruit set, but when that happens, they pretty much always will flower a second and third time. It's normal for us to get as many as 3 blooms off of these trees, and that's awesome because they just keep flowering until they make fruit. So, but I would imagine we'll have some later April Dwarf Hawaiians here come next year. So here's one that sent out a bloom and actually has a few fruit set on it.
So if the home garden is watching and they have some fruit set now, just don't do anything special, just let the tree do its thing at this point?
If you can spray to control anthracnose, you should do it.
Okay.
Especially in an interior area where there's higher level of dew and stuff. Depends on how much fruit is on the tree. If it's just a couple panicles or whatever, maybe you won't be bothered to do anything about it. If the whole tree has, or a lot of the canopy has little fruits on it, then it would be best to probably try to control anthracnose and perhaps irrigate the tree to get it to hold on to a little more fruit, at least for first couple months. But I'd be surprised if there's too many trees that have a significant amount of fruit. I don't like to irrigate my mango trees when I'm still waiting for them to flower, because it can discourage them from blooming in certain circumstances. So you have to kind of make a judgment call based on how much of the canopy you expect to get fruit from from your bloom and how much of it like you're still waiting on. So if it's most of the canopy, then you shouldn't do that, but you shouldn't water the tree, I should say. Those are the things that would come to mind if they actually have any fruit on them right now. Most of them won't. You know, something like that, I'm not going to irrigate this tree to try to get it to hold on to an extra mango on that panicle or whatever. I'm just going to let it be. So anyway, so we'll look at a couple other varieties that look like they're responding to the conditions of the last couple weeks, and take a look.
Besides the favorable weather, did you do anything special to these trees that might be encouraging early bloom, or?
No, I'm not applying anything that would make them flower early. There's nothing that I'm aware of that will accomplish that here in Florida. If we were in the more tropical latitudes, then we could spray them with potassium nitrate, but that's not really going to do anything here to make them flower. It's really more of their response to the weather conditions of the last several weeks. Okay, this is Phoenix. Phoenix is an early season variety for us, and this one is already displaying swelling buds here in the first week of December. So I would think that probably the whole tree won't go, but now that I'm looking at it closely, it's got quite a bit of swelling material on it, so maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we will get a complete early bloom on this tree. Yeah, okay. So I hadn't looked at this yesterday, but apparently most of this Phoenix tree is going to flower now. Phoenix does flower pretty easily for us. We get full blooms on our Phoenix trees here pretty much every year. So it's a real reliable bloomer. Now, it's not necessarily for some people a reliable fruiter, because in more humid areas, this mango can have some issues with disease. Now, over here, it does great. We get a lot of fruit from our Phoenix trees, but it can be temperamental as you go further west, or at least further inland, depending on what part of the state you're in. But it is a reliable early season mango for us, and it's a very good quality mango. Not a very big fruit, but like pretty. And I'm looking forward to getting early Phoenix this year. So that's great. Great to see.
Now, when do you remember pulling off your last fruit from last year that you ate?
Last fruit from last year was probably beginning of October or the end of September. I can't recall.
So about 2 months ago?
Yeah.
And we're already talking about...
I think it was a Neelam,
wow,
if I'm not mistaken. I didn't record it, but... Okay, so over here, you can see the bloom on the top that's already come out. This is our Testolic mango. And there's some on this side, I think, that's already set fruit. Yeah, so this panicle, you can see all the little fruitlets that have already set in. And the good news is that it's pushing on lots of other stems here. So we're going to definitely get a pretty significant early Testolic bloom. That's not unusual, okay? We usually get at least two blooms off of this variety. It is very bloom sensitive, so if you get a little brief cold front, it's probably flowering. You know, doesn't always carry a lot of fruit from that first bloom, but inevitably sometime in spring, because the canopy is so dense, I don't always see the fruit that's hidden inside it, and I'll be walking by this tree and I'll see a fruit on the ground that I didn't even know was in there, you know? So I imagine we'll get a few spring ones off of this, and then it'll have a second bloom, most likely, in a month or two, and it'll have more fruit that it'll carry from that second bloom. So that's normal for Testolic. But it's a fairly consistent spring mango / early summer mango for us. And we're glad to have it around. Here we have a few Rosa trees. This little guy has blooms open on it already. Hasn't really set fruit yet. The flowers kind of just opened up. Let me see if this one's doing anything. No, not yet, but it will be. So we have 3 Rosa trees on this property. They flower every single year multiple times, so this is another one that like it triggers very easily, and we always get like multiple crops from them. Kind of a disease-prone tree though, so it's not one that I leap to recommend to people in South Florida. Very slow growing. They're dwarfish here. This variety is originally from Brazil, and people from Brazil are very familiar with it. It's like if I have a Brazilian customer and I'm talking about mangoes to them, they usually can remember the Rosa or the Rosa mango as they pronounce it. But anyway, in the springtime when there's not a lot of varieties around, if you have nice intact Rosas, even though they've got some fiber, they're certainly not difficult to sell or find people that want to eat them, right? So, and I have a few customers that are actually real fond of it. It's a pretty fruit, like red, pink, not huge, but they're, you know, small to medium size. And it's normal, and I expect these to have some bloom by December pretty much every year. They'll usually have a second bloom later on if they don't carry a lot of fruit off of that first bloom. So they will reflower. Okay, this tree over here I know has some stuff coming out. So this is Jaya. Paul, you and I did a video about this earlier this year. It has a panicle that already came out here that's got some tiny fruit set, but the more encouraging thing is that we've got swelling tips all over this tree now, and it's definitely going to have an early bloom. Now, the story on this tree was that it would flower in the off-season for the original owner, which was exciting. Any kind of off-season flowering mango is of interest to us. It would flower in the summer months up in Brevard County. We have not had that happen for us yet, but what we have observed with this tree in the last couple of years is it flowers very easily. So that's certainly welcome. Even if it doesn't produce off-season or has not yet produced off-season bloom, it is producing regular season bloom very easily. So it's not a stubborn tree when it comes to blooming. And that's welcome in an era where we have pretty mild winters most years. I did have a customer who purchased a tree from us. We do graft these. And his was probably 3 or 7 gallon size. I'm not sure. This was something somebody emailed to us. But it had flowers on it like a month or longer ago. And that would qualify as off-season bloom. That wasn't, you know, I think that person was in South Florida somewhere. So this is an interesting variety. Had a good first year. It's an Indian flavored mango. So we're going to keep monitoring this guy, but it's nice to see that it's flowering here the first week of December, or about to flower the first week of December.
Now you've tasted it for the first time this past season. How was it?
It was good. The first few that I had were not great. They were excessively mild, but the ones that came later in the crop were better. And it was a little similar to like a sunrise mango, not quite as strong. But that can be a good thing because there's people for whom that's a little too much, right? That really strong Indian, West Indian profile is just, they might like it if it's a little more subdued. So that's how I would characterize this, but that was its first crop. It's really common as mangoes get more maturity for the subsequent crops that come in other years to be stronger in flavor. So we're going to see how this guy tastes this year and going forward. Right now I'd classify it as a medium-bodied mango. So nice size fruit, and it looks very productive so far because that first crop was very strong. We were bracing this tree up. Well, it might even be in the video, I'm not sure, but like it made plenty of fruit for its age. So we'll keep evaluating it.
Absolutely.
Let's take a look.
You know it's a dwarf or a big tree? Do you know yet?
It's got a sprawling habit. It was supposedly a Bangin Polly seedling. Bangin Polly is kind of a medium vigor tree, I suppose, but like it does want to sprawl out, just like this, but the leaves are very different on this. This has longer internodes. The rate of growth has been no more than moderately vigorous on this tree since we planted it several years ago. So it's not like a hyper vigorous tree. I think the fact that it flowers and fruits, it's precocious, so it flowers and fruits at a young age, that's going to hold its size in check. Anything that can fruit at an early age oftentimes gives you an assist in terms of trying to keep the canopy under control. So I wouldn't anticipate this being like an out of control monster, but we'll see. Lots of time to still learn about it. This year was the first year it fruited, so. Okay, so this tree is half rosy gold, and the rosy gold half did have some off-season bloom. So we will be getting some very early fruit from this tree, looks like, as long as they hold on and develop. But the good thing is that, well, I was gonna say, a lot of our rosy golds are starting to bud up. This one, it's gonna be hard to see, but I can see it's just starting to poke through. So I would imagine that the rest of the canopy on this rosy gold section of this top work is probably going to flower this month. We'll take a look at some of our other rosy gold trees too that actually have a little bit more bloom action on them, but this one at least has some off-season fruit, which is kind of cool. Over here, this is one of our Creme Brulee mangoes, and the buds are starting to swell up on this guy here. So this tree is definitely going to have at least some early bloom. It wouldn't surprise me if the whole canopy didn't flower, but maybe a good third or 50% of it probably will. And the last couple years, this has flowered early. So it carries some early fruit, and then usually the second crop is more substantial. But we now count Creme Brulee, I guess, as one of our borderline spring and summer fruits. It's an amazing mango. This is like one of the best tasting mangoes we grow. And this is the larger of the two trees. The other one is on a dwarfing stock and much smaller than this. It's not been too aggressive, honestly. It's not a very fast-growing tree. It's an Edward seedling from Gary Zill, but it flowers easily here. It got that trait, I guess, from the Edward. So anything that flowers easily is encouraging in my book. So let's go look at a couple others. This Julie tree has a few flowers coming out of it, as well as some swelling buds that are starting to pop up on it. These panicles are kind of hidden inside the canopy, but you can see that it made female flowers, so this can be a problem with Julie when it doesn't make female flowers. It can come out totally male sometimes. But you see all these little fruitlets? And you can see the female flowers here, that's a female. So that's encouraging to see. And wouldn't surprise me if we have a few spring Julies. Probably most of its crop will come in the summer. I don't see too much activity on the rest of the canopy. But let's go look at this Madame Francis right here. This Madame Francis had some of that early bloom around the same time as those Edward trees we were looking at earlier, and I can spot already little pea-sized fruit up at the top of the canopy. So this is probably going to have multiple distinct crops. That's not unusual. In fact, we had an off-season fruit on this tree this year. Animals beat me out to that, but the rest of the canopy is starting to swell up here. So we've got the early bloom that already has little fruits developing on it, and then the rest that's going to come out in the next few weeks. So that's going to be like a crop, and then there'll be a little gap between its first crop and its second crop. That's not unusual for this tree. It does that here. It's an easy bloomer for sure. And then we have a Sugarloaf tree over here with some flowers on it also. Up there at the top of the canopy. Hopefully you can zoom in, Paul, so they can see that. And actually looks like there is some fruit set on it already. Let's check this side of the tree. Yeah, there's a couple panicles on this side. So it's not too significant. There's some swelling buds on some of the older stems, it looks like, but not too much activity yet. Anyway, sugarloaf trees usually do flower pretty easily here, so at some point they'll all be blooming. This is one that we never have any question about its reliability to flower here. So
it gets a lot of female flowers though early, right?
Male. Yeah, that's normal. These trees, unfortunately, can have that issue where they come out like overwhelmingly male, and then you get little or even zero fruit sometimes. But as they get older, that subsequent bloom that comes out of them, you know, like a month later or whatever, usually has enough female flowers to set fruit and make a crop. And that happened this last year. We had a few early ones, right? But most of the sugarloaves actually came like in the middle of the mango season after they flowered the second time. So that's generally a response to the temperatures at the time that they are blooming or before the flowers have even opened. If they don't like what they're receiving, they'll come out completely male. If it's a little on the warmer side as the flowers are emerging, they're more likely to produce enough female flowers to set fruit. So, okay, and then one last, we'll take a look at those other rosy gold trees and see how they're doing. And as we go, I'm just looking to see if there's any surprises along the way that might be starting.
Are there any trees that you're surprised they haven't fruited? I mean, haven't bloomed yet?
The Rosa that's in the collection over here, I would normally expect more activity on right now. But that did have a significant crop last year, and sometimes that delays the process of blooming a little bit. Otherwise, not really. It's the kind of the usual suspects. Some of them I haven't looked too closely at yet, and it wouldn't shock me in the next few days to see them swelling up. Like Jean Ellen is one that would normally start to flower pretty early. Ah Ping, we cut back really hard, but that's not unusual to see panicles starting to come out in December on that one either. So let's take a look at rosy golds. Okay, so you can already see there's some fruit that are plum-sized on this tree. And then this had some bloom around the same time as those first flowering Edwards, and the fruit are already kind of beyond pea size. You can see up in there. You can zoom over here. There's really good fruit set on wow. These. That's normal. These are very good at setting fruit. They will also drop a lot of fruit, unfortunately, but that's kind of their path to making a lot of mangoes.
Is there any way to prevent or slow down the dropping?
Well, I mean, just keeping the trees healthy and providing them some subsequent, some irrigation. Yeah, see, these are.
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. So this is really off-season fruit. It's not
December 2024.
Yeah, those wouldn't surprise me if they're ready before the start of the regular season, as I define it, which is kind of like the second half of March. But look at all the fruit on this.
Yeah.
Pretty good. So, but you can still plainly see that a lot of the canopies on these rosy golds aren't really doing anything yet. But now that I'm looking closely here, we do have some swelling buds starting to peek out. So my estimation would be by the end of this month, all our rosy gold trees should be flowering, full bloom. They should have a full bloom. We should probably by the end of the month already have some fruit set on that, this forthcoming bloom actually. And as long as, you know, we get a little bit of an assist from the weather, we should have late March and April rosy golds. And then there's always on the trees that don't hold a lot of fruit, a secondary bloom, and then that'll be our June, July rosy golds. But with these kind of weather conditions we're receiving right now, with it being nice and cool and dry, full bloom from the rosy golds is what I'm predicting. So when you come back next time, Paul, or when we do another video on this, maybe by the end of this month, you'll see all the activity that's going to be on these trees at that point. So, and behind us here, there's more Edward trees. These Edward trees are also flowering, just like the ones on the west end of the property. And so a few of the panicles came out early on these too. This one's really looking good. Look at all that fruit. So these won't all hold, okay? We're happy if we just get one mango off the panicle in the end, but like This is how you get good crops, and lots of swelling material too. So these are trees that got pruned back a couple of years ago, and now they're back into production again. So anyway, so that's pretty much all the trees that I can think of that are beginning to flower, you know, have swelling buds, or even already have a little bit of fruit on them. It's not all of them most likely, because I haven't gone through and looked at every single tree lately. I'm sure there are others that I have missed, and then, you know, in the next week or so, I'm going to see more and more of them jumping in on the action. So
Excellent. Thank you very much, man. Everybody, I'm going to put the link in the website, all that information to Alex's website down at the bottom of the description. Thanks, Alex, for having us come on out.
yeah, thanks for watching.
All right, everybody, there it was. That's Alex, and we had a great time today looking around the farm. TropicalAcresFarms.com. Check them out. The link is below in the description. And if you have any mango trees that are starting to bloom or even set fruit, now maybe you have a better idea why and maybe what to do with them. And what do you expect next to happen out here?
So I expect that once this cold front is through, we should see a response on a lot of our other early season mangoes. And even maybe a little bit on some of our mid or later season varieties, but mostly early season varieties that are going to start to activate, start pushing out panicles by the end of this month, and they might continue to do that into the early part of January. And then some of them will still be at rest. They'll still be dormant. That's normal and expected. We're going to need probably a more significant cold front that lasts perhaps closer to 2 weeks, at least beyond 10 days, to activate kind of everything else. But I would expect that to happen at some point in time, if not towards the end of this month, at some point in January or February, hopefully. And the rest of the trees will go. But we'll certainly see some amount of spring crop from the weather that we're getting right now, which is great weather. We're really happy with this weather that we've been receiving lately. We hope it continues the rest of the winter. So,
all right, 2025 mango season is coming, and we're just about to leave 2024, the year. Thanks for having us coming out. It was a great year.
Absolutely.
If you want to see a review of 2024, I'll put that link below that I did with Alex of his mango season. And definitely check that out and get ready for 2025. We are going to be back here many times this year doing many videos. If you have any ideas or questions of what videos you might want, post it in the comments below, and maybe we'll come back here and just do a video on that topic. Until then, everybody, thank you for watching. Thank you for subscribing. Have a great day. Thank you, Alex, for having us coming out, and keep growing.